Thank you very much indeed, ladies. Before I go into the crux of the talk I want to make and issues I want to raise over the ombudsman, I must welcome our new Minister for Food and Environment, Farming and the Environment, Jim Fitzpatrick. First time I think we've had a minister to the NFU press breakfast. Jim, I know you're meeting with our team later on this morning about EID. We really hope that we can come to some real flexibility in that and continue fighting the corner. Hilary Benn is here on Thursday to talk about cost and responsibility sharing and set-aside. We have the announcement of the court hearing later on this morning on bystanders. Just an indication of the work the NFU is attacking day in, day out, trying to make sure the farming world remains as efficient and competitive as possible. We've seen over the last 100 years, wheat yields tripled. The last 50 years, milk yields have doubled. That's down to innovation and investment. We've also seen the rapid growth of the supermarket and grocery sector. It would be anyone's surprise that in 1838, none of the big four supermarkets were about. We were as farmers. However, now they take 75% of that marketplace. They actually, and this is one of the reasons why they have such a strong ear in government, they contribute from the food and drink retailing 21.7 billion to the whole economy. So they're important. They also do good things with the farming industry. It's important to stress the sort of work that Morrison's announced last year, putting investment into demonstration farms, working to make sure that we can get more competitive and best practice onto farms and provide the sort of product our consumers want. So why, having said about the good things, am I pushing today for the supermarket ombudsman? I've been driving around the country a lot recently, and you turn the radio on as you drive home and picking up different reports, whether it's Mervyn King commenting on regulating banks, whether it's Barack Obama. You've heard a lot of people pronouncing on the mistakes that have been made. Just I will quote, and Tom Hine pulls my leg mercilessly for doing this, quote, Barack Obama. He said on, and this was me driving home the other night, a culture of irresponsibility that took root, referring to the banks. One of the most significant contributors to the economic downturn being the lack of adequate regulatory structures to prevent abuse. And what was needed were changes designed to promote free and fair markets. Obama was keen to stress that it's a careful balance, and I quote, to put in place rules that will allow our markets to promote innovation while discouraging abuse. We seek to create a framework in which markets can function freely and fairly. A system that works for business and consumers. And I think I'd like to just pick out a couple of points from that. Fairness. And let's relate that to supermarkets. We've had in the grocery market since the 1960s a massive consolidation. And the problem is that we know that supermarkets are not dependent on individual small businesses. Supermarkets have been successful. They bring choice, quality food and cheap prices to consumers. But some of what they do now and how they treat suppliers, if allowed to carry on for much longer, will bring down the very supply chain they rely on to prosper. That will, and the Competition Commission supports this, will rebound on consumers in the long run. I do think the fact that it was a voluntary code was proposed and has been rejected by the retailers, they wouldn't buy into it, it means that we have to turn to the recommendations from the Competition Commission that came out in April 2008. What did they recommend? They recommended the strengthened and extended grocery supply code of practice, bringing in more supermarkets into that. And second, that the main supermarkets voluntarily sign up to an ombudsman to monitor and enforce the new code. Well, you wonder why they're not prepared to do it. Let me give you three reasons that we hear. One is on cost. They say it's going to be costly and bureaucratic. Even if the costs were £5 or £6 million a year, as estimated by the Competition Commission, that would be less than 0.005% of the supermarket's annual turnover. Let's put it in a farmer's income term. That's equivalent for an average farmer's income of just one jar of Marmite a year. It's a piddling little amount. So for them to say cost I think is completely missing the mark. What are they worrying about? Why are they worrying about this as regards supermarkets if they are all behaving correctly as they tell us they are? There is a good example out there. The independent advertising adjudicator was set up when the Granada-Carlton merger took place. And they were basically meant to make sure the industry was working fairly. In 2009, the report said no official complaints. It demonstrates that you've got nothing to fear, no complaints. So that's my no cost, and I think they've got nothing to fear as well. Actually, also, we think it could be to their benefit in the long run. And this is supported by the work done by Professor Roger Clark at Cardiff Business School, when he says that the cost of introducing an ombudsman would be very small compared to the benefits it would bring to consumers and retailers. And as Liz has already said, we believe that consumers are on board as well. And that's really important. 81% said in the YouGov poll, they would support the establishment of an independent watchdog to monitor supermarkets and penalise them if they carry out the kind of practices I've already mentioned. So, if the supermarkets were prepared to do this, it would help them also add this to their corporate social responsibility sections in their annual reports and brag about it. So, why not and why now? I have 3 reasons why we should do it now. We've now had 3 full inquiries of supermarkets since 2000. Each one takes time, costs money and resources. This last inquiry has come with a clear, unequivocal recommendation about the code of practice and an ombudsman. We're not saying there won't be further inquiries, but we think this is a strong recommendation and we should act on it now. The second point is we have really clearly in our minds what's happened in the banking sector and the lack of regulation. I've mentioned that governments and politicians have gone through a major soul-searching about regulation versus free markets, and banking ought to be a really clear wake-up call for what has gone on. But also Andrew George, and careful quoting MPs, I think Andrew George has been in the press for other reasons regarding expenses probably recently as well, but I'll quote Andrew George in this account. He chairs the Grocery Market Action Group, and he said it's the small and medium-sized enterprises that form the fabric of our economy. They are the ones that will help drag the UK back onto its feet and out of recession. Those involved in the supermarket supply chains need reassurances that they'll be protected, that they can make that innovation and investment for the long term that I've just touched on. Somebody gave me a phrase that I think summarises this. The supermarkets cannot go on, the suppliers cannot go on feeding the hand that bites them. To conclude, and I think it is important that we really raise, and the reason why we've been involved with ActionAid, putting adverts out to raise the awareness of this moment in time, is unless the supermarkets change track, the Competition Commission will refer this decision to Peter Mandelson and the new Department of De Beers with a recommendation to establish that office. Jim, I really hope that DEFRA, the way I've challenged in the past over early warning systems about food security, about PSAs, will pick this up and realise how important it is to the many small suppliers. We need to take this opportunity to point out how damaging the failure to act now will be. So that's why we've taken the last Royal Show as a point to talk about investment, innovation, about wanting the retailers to help us meet the big challenges going forward. So as sad a day as it is to be here for our last Royal Show breakfast, we do still want to look, as they were in 1838, forward to the challenges of tomorrow. What I would like is Jim and DEFRA to back us on this, but also the journalists here in the room, go and knock on the supermarket's doors down there at the Royal Show and ask them why they're not prepared to sign up to the Ombudsman. Thank you very much indeed.